She has the actual mind of a 2-year-old, and men start molesting her, which she enjoys thoroughly. And then she goes on a quote unquote journey of self-discovery, which ends up with her as a French prostitute, then finds true happiness in lesbianism. Even when you do monitor what they're watching, in the 5th season of something, that's when the studios will sneak in the transsexual, non-binary skateboarder, which is actually a thing in the Paw Patrol spinoff. You thought because you watched 3 years of it with your kid that it's safe, and then they change things on you. A family paid something like $300 to have a special event that involved the Wicked Queen from Snow White, and it was a transsexual. It was a man.
Disney and Disney World, it seems like it's undermining their ability to make money.
Somebody had mentioned maybe there are some people who are intentionally trying to drive the stock down so that there can perhaps be a takeover, and then they'll make, a ton of money. That makes more sense than just blowing $1 billion.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Defenders and Disciples podcast. Today, my guest is James Carrick from Worth It or Woke. Worth It or Woke approaches entertainment criticism through a Christian and conservative worldview. James's mission was to provide a conservative alternative to the popular yet progressively captured Rotten Tomatoes. James has a degree in theater and philosophy, and he approaches movie criticism from a philosophical foundation grounded in aesthetics and ethics. Rather than offering a binary rating system, Worth It or Woke uses a gradient scale, which they coined their Wokometer. This nuanced approach provides their members with a balanced review of movies and shows. During our conversation, James and I discussed his motivations for starting Worth It or Woke, the state of the entertainment industry, nefarious and pernicious agendas in children's entertainment, possible motives behind the woke agendas in Disney and other forms of entertainment alternatives that promote Christian, conservative, and truth-based values, and much more. And now I give you James Carrick. Hey James, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, Taylor. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
I'm happy to be here.
Before we get started, I have some icebreaker questions that we're going to run through. And after that, we'll talk about your company and you all's values and how you got started. So first off, What is your, do you have a favorite film or book?
Well, look, there are so many great films out there and so many wonderful books. It's hard to say that I have a particular favorite. I would say it's more that as the mood strikes me, some various films that I've enjoyed throughout the years come to mind. And they might not be the most sophisticated films, but they're ones that you can watch over and over again. Right now, probably the Back to the Future trilogy stands out the most, especially the first one. It's practically a perfect screenplay.
Yeah, those are really great. And I think they're remaking it or something, which it's inevitably probably not going to be as good.
All right, so there have been rumors about it being remade or rebooted or whatever you want to call it ever since Tom Holland became Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. Because he does have sort of that Michael J. Fox quality. He's a little guy, kind of a squeaky voice, good actor, good comedic timing. And with him and Robert Downey Jr. as sort of already the mad scientist in the Iron Man films, that's what the rumor started with. But was it Zuckerberg? No, not Zuckerberg. Zemeckis. Zuckerberg is Facebook. Robert Zemeckis, the director and also the writer, co-writer, I forget his name, they have it in their, it wouldn't be their contract, but they have some kind of legalese that prevents the studios from creating another one without their express permission, which they said that they will never give.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, you throw enough money at them, who knows?
Sure, yeah.
And books. You asked about books. The first 15 lives. Yeah, the first 15 lives of Harry August is one of my favorites. And for anybody who is a fan of science fiction, it's by Claire North. That's a pen name, but it's still what it's under. It really is an excellent book. It's about a character who lives a normal life and then dies. And when he dies, he starts over again. But he doesn't come back online fully until he's about 5 years old. And it's the first 15 of those lives.
Wow.
Pretty interesting.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So on the topic of movie's kind of the opposite of that question. What's an underrated movie?
Underrated or overrated?
I'm sorry, overrated. Sorry, overrated.
That's all right. Overrated. Well, again, there are a lot of those, especially let's say in like the last 15 years. Virtual
Mm.
anything that is nominated for an Oscar uh, has been
Yeah.
overrated. Um, but in very recent history, you've got Poor Things, which is an absolutely disgusting, vile movie. I don't know if you know anything
I
about it,
haven't.
except for that it's okay. So it stars Emma Stone, and it's a retelling of Frankenstein, and she's
Okay.
the Frankenstein's monster. But at its core, what it is that she has her own infant's brain inserted into her dead body. So she commits suicide. I'm going to spoil it because it's such a
It's
horrible
all right.
movie.
Yeah.
Uh, she commits suicide, but the baby inside of her is almost fully developed and still alive when Willem Dafoe's mad scientist finds her. And so he kills the baby, removes both of their brains, puts the baby's brain inside of her, and from that point on tries to raise her and sort of watch what happens with her development. And from the point that the movie actually starts, men start falling in love with her because of the way that she looks. Now, mind you, she has the actual mind of a 2 year old, and men start molesting her, which she enjoys thoroughly.
What in
And
the
then she
world?
goes, oh yeah, then she goes on a quote unquote journey of self discovery, which ends up with her as a French prostitute, and that is where she truly finds the meaning of life. Is being run through by a bunch of different strangers,
Oh my
and
gosh.
then finds true happiness in lesbianism.
Wow. They just went all the
Oh,
way.
yeah, the horror on your face was exactly what I felt when I was at the screener for that. It is a
That's
vile, detestable film.
yeah. That's like it makes you wonder like why? Like why? I mean, I could think of some reasons why and how the culture of Hollywood and
No, it's a
their
pedo fetish film,
yeah, exactly.
100%.
Oh my gosh, that's yeah. The warmer never went up to that idea or trying
Yeah.
to.
Now on a lighter
Gosh.
note, an overrated movie that's just overrated and not disgusting is the Barbie film.
Oh yeah. Yes,
So
definitely.
everybody went over nuts over that, and it made $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a sexist, misandric, so it's anti-male
Mm-hmm.
scree for 2 hours or 2 plus hours, whatever it is. But
Yeah.
not only that, aside from that, it's just not a well done movie.
Mm-mm.
It's
No.
it's a narrative mess with about I don't know about 6 or 7 different attempted plots that never really gel together as anything except for when America, whatever her last name, gives her 3 minute scree about how difficult it is to be a modern woman. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's an overrated film.
Yeah. And the man hating was almost to the point where I was trying to figure out is this like is it a parody? Like are they trying
Right.
to make fun of themselves because they're doing it so hard? But I don't think that's the case. I think they actually are so tone
Yeah.
deaf that they thought that was normal and acceptable.
Yeah, I thought the same thing while I was watching it right up until the conclusion. When
Mm-hmm.
America gets up and gives that 3 minute speech, and we find out that the end all be all to Barbie is her having a vagina.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was
Yeah.
pretty self explanatory.
Good gosh. Um, wow. All right. Last one. What advice would you give to your younger self? Don't watch Barbie and don't
Uh,
watch Poor Things.
don't watch those things. Yeah, I mean, that's an always fun thought experiment. Of course, if I were to
Mhm.
actually do it over again, I wouldn't change anything because I have a very nice life. I have a wonderful family, a wife, 7 kids. That I wouldn't want to change that.
Yeah.
But if I could change something without changing that particular outcome, I would tell myself not to go to college, not to waste the time or money
Mm.
on that, and just get things started instead.
Yeah. What'd you go to college for?
Theater. I have a
Okay.
degree in theater and philosophy.
So let's talk about your company. You know, your company or your website's called Worth It or Woke. How did that start? And like, can you talk about like why you did that and like what was the motivation? If you're interested in new innovative training tools, then you have to check out Ace VR. And make sure to use promo code DEFENDERS to get 1 month free. I'll admit that when I first heard about this device, I thought it was probably a gimmick and there was no way it would feel realistic. But the moment I put on the headset and held the controller, it was obvious to me that we had stepped into a new era of firearms training. Not only does the virtual reality environment accurately represent the real world, but the pistol controller has the same weight and feel of a real gun. And the trigger feels just like an actual trigger. With Ace VR, you can play several different game modes, from drills that work on the fundamentals of marksmanship to competitive stages, and even more entertaining modes that work on situational awareness. You can also compete with friends and others in the Ace community. And don't forget to use promo code DEFENDERS to get 1 month free.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's a series of things. It's not any one particular thing. Um, yeah, certainly, as a parent of 7 kids, for a while now, well, my wife and I had been concerned about what they've been consuming. And with the advent of streaming services over cable, it became so difficult to monitor, to know what it is that
Yeah.
they're watching. And then, even when you do monitor what they're watching, in the 5th season of something, that's when the studios will sneak in the transsexual, non-binary skateboarder, which is actually a thing in the Paw Patrol spinoff. There's a non-binary skateboarder who's best friends with the Rubble character. Yeah, I mean, they sneak it in, and you don't know. You thought because you watched 3 years of it with your kid that it's safe, and then they change things on you. So that concern had been something that my wife and I had talked about for a long time. And then I noticed that I wasn't really going to movies anymore, and it was obvious it was something that I really enjoyed. I wanted to be an actor for most of my life. And instead, I was just watching all of the old stuff that I had enjoyed throughout the years over and over again. And then also, I started noticing that Rotten Tomatoes hadn't been worth much. I would look at it and go, look at the topic of this, and they're getting an 80%. I'll bet you that that's really only a 60% positive. And then you would see it and invariably say, yeah, that's what I would market it, would be about a 60.
Yeah.
And then add on to that, I don't know how familiar you are or at all with the comedian Adam Carolla.
Vaguely.
Vaguely? Okay. So he used to be comedy partners with Jimmy Kimmel.
Okay.
And obviously we know that Jimmy Kimmel went far, far, far to the left.
Yeah.
Well, Adam never really changed. He was sort of a moderate leftist. I would say that he's probably more of a moderate to the right now. But he has a very successful podcast and podcast company. And, excuse me, on his program for a long time, I caught up with him on his podcast during the pandemic. I wasn't really doing much of anything else at the time, except for building fun structures for the kids. So I noticed that he had a game that they would play with their guests called the Rotten Tomatoes game, in which the various guests and his staff would try to guess what the critics gave it. And he started to have a calculus where he would break down, well, it has this particular intersectional topic or person or whatnot, and the director thinks this way about particular things. I bet you that the critics gave it this, and it pretty much lined up with my about 20% off per what intersectional person of the year it had or topic of the year that it was discussing. And sort of all of those things kind of clicked together. My brother and I had talked about doing a website for a long time, or doing something, trying to do a podcast or whatnot. And at the time, it looked like he was going to have some free time in order to do it. And so I started everything, and he fell through, and here I am a year and a half later, working till about 3 in the morning and getting up at 6 in the morning to do my other things.
Wow. Yeah, well, I found out about your website. We were watching, I think it was Roadhouse, and that movie wasn't, I wouldn't consider woke, but there were just so many elements in that movie that were just bad from like just an acting standpoint. And so I was curious about something like how often they use CGI in that movie, and I was looking up reviews, and your website popped up, And I clicked it. I was like, oh, this is actually really neat that you can see, because I've always used like Plugged In or similar
Sure.
website like that for movies for the kids. But it was always kind of, I mean, they do pretty good, but it was always kind of missing something. And I like the way that your website was more refined towards like what I was looking for. And so I was really impressed. And so can you go through the process of like, I mean, obviously you got to watch the movie, or do you have like a team? Like, how do you do that?
A team. I've had various people volunteer. I mean, when I say we, it primarily is me,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm using the royal we, which sometimes I get flack for because I use it maybe a little bit too often. But it is grammatically correct because the business is an LLC, so it is technically its own entity. So when I
Mm-hmm.
say we, I mean me. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, it's my wife.
it's all right. There's the we.
Yeah, it's on the thing.
See, it is we.
There's the we. It's definitely a we. She's a stay-at-home mom, and so she takes care of a lot of stuff, and she's been picking up a lot of slack while I've been doing this experiment. So yeah, but about a year and a half I've been doing this, and
Mhm.
now I got distracted. What was the exact question? You want to know about my
Yeah,
process?
just the process of like, do you watch? I mean, I guess now I know that you watch all the videos and then you go through analyzing whether it's, I should say, based or woke.
That's right. Yeah, I watch it and I take notes throughout, and I try very diligently not to miss anything
Mm-hmm.
as far as the woke elements are concerned, because I certainly hear about that in the comments if I
Mm-hmm.
if I do. I try
Yeah.
to remind everybody who leaves the comments that the comments are open because I might miss something.
Mm-hmm.
So please feel free to add it. You don't have to rip me apart because I missed it. Just let
Yeah.
me know that I missed it. I'll even if I acknowledge that I think that you're correct in something, I'll even make the notation in the review. Um, so yeah, I do that, and then I try to score things as fairly as I can. As you notice, that the website is broken down into parts,
Mm-hmm.
where I have the actual review breakdown scored for things like people look at the website and they say worth it or woke, so it must be a binary decision. And you can see if you actually go
Mm-hmm.
through the website that it's not. I
Right.
actually do rate the story, the performances,
Mm-hmm.
the visuals, all of those things. I give a solid review, and then separate from the review are the elements that I consider to be uber progressive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then how much do they actually affect the film, which I get into a lot of trouble with as well, because people might disagree with the score that I give. And
Mm.
again, the reason that I break down the elements is so that you can make the decision for yourself. I often say, maybe a bit too often, that I'm just trying to give information, not marching orders.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. And when did you may have said this, but when did you start the website?
I launched it officially February of last year.
Okay, wow. So it is, I mean, it is fairly new.
Yeah, it's pretty new.
Is it,
I
I
do have a
mean,
fellow who's been volunteering to help me with the video games. He's been a little busy right now, so those games have dropped off. And he's supposed to pick things up again, and I hope to one day actually be able to pay him. That would be nice.
yeah. Have you noticed an uptick in traffic and people using you as a resource or using the
Yeah,
website?
definitely. Definitely. We get a few 100,000 visits a month, which is pretty nice. And it seems to be growing. And our subscriptions are growing every month. I get about 1.75 new subscribers every day.
Okay.
So, and that's growing as well. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Wow. So going back to the entertainment industry inserting these like woke progressive elements into their films, and it's not just in the entertainment industry, it's also Ford, it's, Disney in general, Disney World. It surprises me because oftentimes it seems like it's undermining their ability to make money. And so, would you like to speak to that at all? As like, why do you think companies would do that and not in lieu of doing the thing that would make them money? These devices reset your trigger after each shot so that you can dry fire just like you live fire. in semi-auto. Plus, the Blackbeard fires a laser out of the bore so that you can track your shots and work on height over bore offset for close engagements. And the Blackbeard X uses an accelerometer to track and analyze the motion of your gun on their Mantis X app. Even the United States Marine Corps saw the training value in the Blackbeard X and began to utilize these devices in basic training. So now Marine Corps marksmanship coaches can analyze recruit shooting performance using the Blackbeard in order to make them better shooters. So stop wasting time with traditional dry fire, order yourself a Blackbeard or Blackbeard X today and start training to a higher standard.
Yeah, that's been a real head scratcher, and everybody I've talked to has asked me that, and I still don't have a great answer because it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Mm-mm.
So you have Disney, who lost something like $1 billion last year in their films. I mean, the real money is still made at the parks. That's where they make the bulk of their cash, is what my understanding is. But still, $1 billion is a lot of money to lose.
Yeah.
So it has to be ideologically driven.
Mm-hmm.
They have to not care about the money. And I can only think of one of two reasons. One is because they really are true believers, and they do get that ESG money from places like BlackRock or whatnot that give them marching orders. So they are still being funded to some degree, but that has to eventually run out.
Right.
So they either are true believers, and it is very cult-like where the money just doesn't actually matter to them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're willing to lose it. And maybe it's a lost leader for them. They're willing to lose that $1 billion as long as they make enough money to stay profitable on their other avenues so that they can preach and change minds and hearts and minds. Or I did hear this theory, and I can't remember where I heard it. Sort of mentioned offhandedly. I think I maybe heard it on the podcast Pat Gray Unleashed. I think his producer Keith Malinek might have said it offhandedly, but it's the only other thing that makes sense to me, but only if it makes sense, and I'll explain. I'm not a financial guy, so I don't know. But somebody had mentioned the possibility that maybe there are some people who are intentionally trying to drive the stock down so that there can perhaps be a takeover, and then they'll make a ton of money because they'll own Disney for pennies on the dollar. So that if that's something that can be done, I suppose that makes more sense to me than just blowing $1 billion.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the influence to be able to tell them to do that, knowing good and well that it's going to drive their stock down and drive their customers away, and you come in and save the day, especially come in and take it over and be like, hey, no more of this woke stuff, and now we're going back to the basics, and you look like a hero in that situation.
Right?
Yeah, that is.
I mean, those are the only two things that make sense to me, is that they're true believers and they just don't actually care about the money, or that somebody is trying to make a lot more money off of doing it.
Right. Yeah, because you would think after Bud Light that they would have realized this is a bad idea. And
I don't understand it at all. I really don't. I mean, I know it throughout those two propositions, but neither makes a lot of sense to me. But even in their parks, it looks like they're going off the deep end. I just saw on Twitter today, so I was breezing through it, so I didn't confirm when the story was released, but I saw where a family paid something like $300 to have a special event that involved the Wicked Witch or the Wicked Queen from Snow White, and it was a transsexual. It was a man.
Oh my gosh!
And when the father asked, because I guess it must have been, but they showed a video and it was relatively passable unless you looked at the Adam's apple. That the dad asked, is this a biological male? And the staff responded that they couldn't say.
Wow. Yeah.
If that's true, one, why aren't we hearing about it more than that?
Yeah.
This should be huge news. I do know that there was that they had a man as a fairy princess or a fairy godmother or something like that. They have a boutique where little girls, well, it's supposed to be little girls, can go in and get made over like princesses. and they had a mustachioed man in dressed up like a princess doing the makeovers.
That's so gross.
Right? I
So
mean,
gross.
if I see that, I take my daughters, and I don't know if I've dropped $10,000 on it, because that's about how much it would take to take my family there. Maybe we just go to another part of the park and we don't leave.
Yeah.
But certainly, if I could afford to just walk
Oh my
away, I
gosh.
certainly would walk away from the park, or walk away from the boutique, but walk away from the park if I could. I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know how people. I wouldn't take my kids to Disney anymore, and they
It's
ask.
Yeah, yeah, and the other day we were having this conversation, and like I went when I was a kid, and there's a nostalgia to it, but now it's
Sure.
just like, no, absolutely not, unless that thing we were talking about a second ago, where someone comes in and saves the day and like brings it back to its fundamental. It's not happening. I mean and that's
You
so
can't
disturbing.
trust turning around the corner.
No, no.
Yeah, I have 5 daughters, and none of them have been to Disney, and I feel bad about it. But they seem to understand. They
Hmm.
seem to. I hope so, as much as they can. We send them to a private Christian school, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, we recently just started homeschooling all of our kids. Well, I say homeschool, but it's online private school, and
Sure,
so it's for all practical purposes, it's homeschool. But
you have to do it. How else can you
so
protect your children from what's going on out there?
yes, one of the best decisions we have made. And not only that, not
Yeah.
only from that perspective, for protecting them from that, but also just academically, it's far more rigorous than what they had in public school. And they actually went to one of the nicer public schools in our area, and I'm so glad. But yeah, going
Oh
back
yeah.
to the
Yeah.
the Disney World thing, like something I always found odd about that the left, the progressive left, often claims that gender is a social construct, and it's just a social construct. But then in order to when someone is transgender, like that man, dressing up, it's like, okay, so if it's a social construct, then why do you need to follow what you were considering to be the social construct? It's such a weird cognitive dissonance that they have when they try to rationalize all of it.
Yes. How can you dress up like a feeling?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah,
What does that
yeah.
even mean?
Mm-hmm.
Have you watched Matt Walsh's "What Is a Woman"?
Yes, fantastic.
That's great. I mean, and what a simple and wonderful way to just cut to the chase. And
Mm-hmm.
every time they start, and you'll see in those interviews and any subsequent interviews that he's had, where people uh, start to answer his question, it's always a circular argument. Well, a woman is what a woman feels like. Well, but what do they feel like? They feel like a woman. But what is that? Whatever they feel like. But what do they
Yeah.
feel like? They feel like a woman. But what is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
brilliant. Brilliant. I mean, as simple as the question is, and that question alone is almost like a litmus test. If you ask someone that question and they have a hard time answering, it's like I basically just shortcutted your values.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that. So I've been really trying to work on my Twitter um, account more than anything as far as
Mm-hmm.
social media is concerned. And the moment that you see pronouns in somebody's bio, you just dismiss everything that they think, say, or do.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you see that in like an email or something. I just think to myself, like, really?
We're
You
done.
think that the most people that see your email are going to see that and be like, oh my gosh, I respect this person now that they've shown me their pronouns. It's,
Glad to know. Boy,
yeah.
what would I have done had I
Yeah.
not known how to refer to you
Yeah.
when you're not around? When you're not
Exactly.
around.
Yeah.
Because I
And
don't know, Taylor, during this conversation, have we used a pronoun? Have I said, other than you, the actual
I don't think
gender
so.
neutral
I don't
pronouns?
think
Yeah.
so.
Why would I call you him when I'm talking to you?
Or they.
Yeah, but it's very important. It's very important that I know when
Hmm.
you're not around how I should refer to you based on your feelings.
Yeah. Well, and this is coming from someone, my name, Taylor, obviously, that is a name that girls have, women have. But I don't feel the need to be like, oh, I need to make sure this person knows my pronouns, because if they don't, then my whole sense of self worth and identity is going to come crumbling down.
Well, that's another thing is that you have these politicians, especially dementia-ridden Joe Biden, constantly reminding us that these people are the bravest, most courageous people on the face of the planet.
Hmm.
Yet, referring to them by the quote unquote wrong pronoun is enough to send them into a death spiral, a literal
Mm-hmm.
death spiral. It's genocide. Sends them. I mean, how many videos do you see of them bawling that somebody referred to them the quote unquote wrong way? But they're the bravest and most courageous among us.
Absolutely. Well, and I had a situation when I was a police officer where I went to a call. There was a suicide call, and I get there. I was the first one on scene. Ambulance. No one's gotten there yet. And I walk in the front door, and there's a girl there. She's the one that had like cut herself, or I guess she like cut her thighs or something. She's a cutter. It was a really sad situation. Well, then the fire and EMS show up, so I let them talk to her to see if she took any pills or anything, and I went to go talk to her roommates. And while I'm talking to them about the situation, trying to get a backstory of what happened, what's going on, if they saw anything, if they know, she has a history. She was like, "Oh no," they were like, her roommate said, "No, this is their first time. They've never done this before." And I was like, "What do you mean they've never done this before?" Like, "Oh, they've never tried to kill themselves before." And I said, "Hold on, who else is here?" Because now I'm thinking, is there someone in the back room that's like now hurting themselves? I don't know. Is there someone bleeding out in the back room? Is there someone that already killed
Sure.
themselves and it was a suicide pact? Like, what is going on? Well,
Yeah.
come to find out, they could see the confusion on my face, and so they finally, I guess, stepped back in reality for a moment, or attempted to step back in reality. And said, "Oh, that's their pronouns." And I just looked at him with a blank stare and just walked off. Like, I'm not playing this freaking game. This is a joke. You have now
This is a
broken down
life and death
reality.
situation for
Exactly.
somebody.
Exactly. I imagine firefighters show up to a scene with there's a fire and they get someone out. It's like, is that the only person inside? Oh no, it's just them. They were the only people inside. Like, wait, hold on. Who else is inside? And
Seconds matter.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, there's and it's so sad because the suicide ideation is so high right now for our young people, and it seems to
Mm-hmm.
be climbing commensurate to the number of people who are now identifying as something other than just male or female.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not doing we're not we're not doing anybody any favors by giving into their delusions and feeding their delusions and their mental illness.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anybody any favors, and it's so sad. There's so many kids. I mean, my kids go to a conservative Christian private school, and there was a young lady there who thought that she was non-binary, and
Mm-hmm.
the school didn't allow her to use different pronouns than what are actually correct, or to dress in they have a school uniform and whatnot. But it's still something that was known.
Mm-hmm.
The school did a good job dealing with it, but it's no one's doing her any favors
Yeah.
by pretending along with her. It's very sad.
I think it was Jonathan Haidt I think he was on Joe Rogan talking about his new book, and he was discussing how social media, how much of a harm that's been on the teens' mental state and their mental
Yeah,
health. And you couple that with the social contagion of the gender confusion thing, and it creates like this positive feedback loop where one, you're now no longer secure in your own self-worth because you're constantly comparing yourself to the top in the algorithm, and then two,
yeah,
now you have this.
unrealistic.
Yes, and then now you have this contagion of, well, maybe am I this? Especially for girls. It's surprising like how many girls are having issues with that, and that's why we keep our kids completely off social media. But um,
Same.
yeah, it's crazy. I can imagine being a kid in school, particularly high school, where someone can take this thing, record you doing something stupid, and then it living infinitely online. Before you do something stupid, people would pick on you, and it would have a shelf life or a half life, a few days, and then it'd be over.
Right.
But now it's like, I mean, you can go viral.
Or the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, it stuck with you all through school,
Mm-hmm.
and then you graduated.
And then it's gone.
It's
Yeah.
gone. It's gone. So you had to deal with it for 8 years, and it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine more people in the world seeing you do the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you than have actually seen you in real life. Like, that's just such a weird, bizarre place
Yeah.
to be in. Like, I have on my channel. I added up the other day. I think I have 12 years of watch time on my videos if you count it all together. Which I mean that's on the lower end when you compare some other channels. But it's I thought to myself, I was like, man, it's gonna be weird. Actually, no, I'm sorry, it was 15. And I've had the realization that's gonna be weird when that cumulative number of years exceeds my actual life. So like when I'm, you know, 37 or something, and that years is like in the 40-year mark. It's like that's just bizarre that more people have seen me on my videos than have actually experienced living. And so like that's just such a bizarre thing for kids to have to deal with that and have to manage those types of online embarrassments and having the
You
whole
can't.
world
It
see
can't
them.
be
You can't.
managed.
Mm-mm.
No, the movie stars out there have whole teams of people who manage these things for them, and
Mm-hmm.
even they can't manage all of it.
Yeah.
We know about Mel Gibson's worst day.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah. Imagine being 16 and having that worst day follow you throughout your life, your career. It's awful. Combine that with the fact that there's no more sense of community uh, in our
Mm-hmm.
society. I mean, church isn't a community for many people. We have a pretty good church family, and so that's helpful for us. But we also have enough of us that we have our own our own little community as well. I mean, the kids
Mm-hmm.
are all old enough to play with one another. That makes a big difference. But we don't even have communal experiences when it comes to something simple like television. I remember growing up, Saturday Night Live was a big deal. Of course, I grew
Mm-hmm.
up with the best years with the Dana Carvey and Phil Hartman and all those years. But we had catchphrases and things that transcended, or at least was completely devoid of any political meaning or affiliation. That we all could just say "pump you up," and everybody
Mm-hmm.
would laugh and knew what you were talking about. We had that shared experience. That doesn't happen. My kids don't have any kind of characters that they recite back to one another. Certainly, nothing happens. I asked them because I thought, well, I have all these kids. What a great resource to tap into to say, hey, what is everybody watching? So
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I can watch and review. And they go, I don't know, I'm not watching anything. We're watching this, they're watching that, they're watching this over here. There's no sense of community in anything anymore. Sports a bit, but even then, I mean, once the day is over, everybody leaves. Nobody's spending the night at anybody's houses anymore. Not very often, anyway. I mean,
Interesting.
it's a
Yeah.
very, it's very, it's a much lonelier, more isolated world, even though we're more able to be connected than ever before.
Yeah, that is a bizarre paradox. Do you think that the fact that they don't have shared interest in entertainment is because of how much more entertainment there is, or do you think it's something else?
Oh, it's not just how much more; it's how much more and how accessible
Mm-hmm.
it is. So, growing up, um, when I was a kid, satellite dishes were just starting to become a thing that everybody was starting to have. So everybody had a lot of entertainment to access, hundreds of channels that they could access.
Mm-hmm.
But because you couldn't access it whenever you wanted to, everybody sat down on Friday night to watch, three or four different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, depending on your group of friends, you guys were all watching what was on NBC at 8 o'clock or CBS at 8 o'clock, even though you still had access to 150 different channels. Those were the things that everybody was watching. Now, everybody watches, sure, we'll go on to Netflix, and maybe we share that because we're all on Netflix. But I'm watching this and I'm
Mm-hmm.
binging this particular program. You're watching this particular. Oh no, I didn't even hear about that program. Oh yeah, I saw that on my
Yeah.
suggestions, but I haven't clicked on it yet. I haven't watched it. And there's no sense of anticipation
Mm-hmm.
of sitting down at the same time, knowing my buddy is over there watching it. Heck, we used to go on the phone with one another as we were watching something so that we could laugh or comment on it as it was happening. we people have tried to recapture that with watch parties on social media, but it's still
No.
not the overall communal experience that it used to be.
Yeah, and that's a phenomenal point because societies base a lot of their culture off of the theater and entertainment, and for years and years that's what it was. Societies would go to the theater together and watch these performances and plays, and then that turned into TV, and we still had, like what you said, kind of a shared link because we were limited in what you could watch, and we were almost all in the same frequency. Well, I guess literally and figuratively in terms of what we were watching. But now it's like, I mean, like you said, like you don't you no longer all watch it on the same time on Tuesday night. Now someone can watch it Tuesday night, someone else can watch it 2 weeks later and can binge watch all of it. You just watch one, and so yeah, it's I never even thought about that, but that's a great point.
Monday morning, we would all get together and talk about the thing that we saw on Friday or on Saturday
Mm-hmm.
Night Live. But again, Saturday Night Live was really, really big when I was young. Um, every catchphrase that exists from Saturday Night Live, virtually all of them happened when I was growing up.
Wow.
And so, yeah, we don't have that. We don't even have sports anymore because they've infused so much, um, radical progressivism into
Mm-hmm.
our sports. So we can't even have that as a shared experience, even though we're watching it live all at the same time. Um,
Yeah.
the Super Bowl. What do we talk about on social media? Oh yeah, did you see they did the Black National Anthem?
Mm-hmm.
So I know I didn't watch it because I didn't want to bother
Yeah.
with that particular part of it.
I didn't
So,
want to see Cardi B acting like a slut.
oh yeah, yeah. What year was it that they had the stripper poles with
Yeah.
Jennifer Lopez?
I don't watch Super Bowl, so I can't remember. But I do remember I remember people talking about it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, man!" Like, what's crazy too is these are the same people that complain about women's rights and women not being equal, and oh, you just see me as a sex object, and it's like, but I'm gonna sing about WAP on stage. It's like, what is happening? Like,
I know.
okay,
And then people will yell at you and say, "Oh, you're being a prude." I'm not being a prude. I mean, this was Sharon Stone style close up of Jennifer Lopez's nether regions, and
mm,
I've got the 6-year-old sitting next to me. So
gosh,
we're turning this off as quickly as we can.
mm,
Who even thought that this was a halfway decent idea? Why did it have to happen? You can't dance without it being provocative, sexually provocative. That can't happen anymore. Well, no, it
yeah,
can't. I was in my real life, I DJ things, and I just did I mostly do weddings, but I did a college event the other day, and the music that they wanted to listen to, it is absolutely X-rated.
oh yeah, I bet.
Uh, More so than even because again, I mostly do weddings, and I have a thing in my contract where if there's anybody who's 15 or younger in a wedding, don't bother asking for this particular type of music, because
Mm-hmm.
it will not be played. I don't care if they're your child, it won't be played. And I go over that with my clients ahead of time, and
Good.
everybody's I've never had a problem with that. But here it's a college event, and they're all 18 or 20, and that's the music that they want to listen to. So I'm going to accommodate them, but it's disgusting. It's actually disgusting music. We had some suggestive stuff, but it wasn't like this.
Mm-hmm. Well, and my wife watches The Voice a lot, and there's some very talented people on that show. I don't care for the show very much, but they don't have to do all that stuff, like, right? Because they're very talented at singing, and I think a lot of it also is just covering up the fact that they just lack talent. Like, hey, let me just sexualize this song a bunch, and then people won't really care how bad I sing or the fact that my lyrics absolutely suck, and they'll just watch me
Yeah,
because sex sells.
yeah. Well, everything's gone through an algorithm now. There are very few artists out there who are actually producing original content. Most of it is we know that this is the formula, and so we
Mm-hmm.
follow that formula. We make sure to have this look, and that's why everybody is absolutely gorgeous. Who also is a singer at the same time. I mean, that wasn't the case. We had ugly singers when I was growing up. And they were better singers. But it did
Yeah.
start to become a thing when MTV is when everything turned into videos. When that started to be a thing, people had to start being beautiful. Wasn't it? I think it was Blues Traveler, if I'm not mistaken, that one of their music videos was Blues Traveler, who they're not particularly attractive guys,
Mm-hmm.
and they're behind the scenes singing as a good-looking band is lip syncing to what it is that they're singing. That was their video. And I don't know if you're old enough to remember Milli Vanilli.
I I don't think so. It sounds
All
familiar,
right,
but
Milli
I'm not.
Vanilli. They were a duo, and they both looked like underwear models, and they had two incredibly popular songs. And right up until it came out that they were not singing at all, they were just lip syncing to somebody else, and it was a huge scandal at the time.
Wow.
So there were hints of that coming along when I was growing up, but certainly when my parents were growing up, there was some. On a, look, Mick Jagger, he's hideous, or Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. I mean, just the kind of person you look away from if you're walking past them in the street. That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah. So getting back to the videos and like what you all do in your website, something I've noticed, and I don't know if you've experienced this or had other people share this, is a lot of these movies, the progressive woke elements they put in these movies sometimes are very well hidden and they're very subtle. Well, sometimes they're not at all, but I've noticed what it causes sometimes is me to wonder, like if I see something and I'm like, was that there for a reason, or was that
A, a
like,
1,000%.
yeah?
A
How
thousand
do you
percent.
deal with that, or how, can you? Because I'm sure other people deal with it too, because it happens so often, and you're left not being able to enjoy the movie because you're like thinking to yourself, like, are they just trying to put this in here, and now I'm thinking about this and not thinking about the plot of the movie?
Yeah. Well, from a practical application, I still try to take note of it and make
Mm-hmm.
note of it on the website, but I will put in there. I can't tell. I said this. There. If you go through various reviews, you'll see where I write down, look, this happens in the movie, and I'm putting it under here as a woke element, but I honestly can't tell
Mm-hmm.
if this is meant to be taken in the spirit that it was given, or if the spirit that it was given was this is actually ultra radical progressivism. So it definitely does happen. But I tell you where the the most irritating instance of it, and I think probably maybe even the most damaging um, instance of what you're talking about is in the DEI casting
Mm-hmm.
of various people. It is so unfair to both audiences and actors alike, but it is most unfair to minorities who are in film because when I grew up and Denzel Washington was on screen, the thought never went in anybody's mind, oh, I bet he got that
Mm-hmm.
role because of his skin color. No, Denzel Washington is a fantastic
Right.
actor, and so he was cast because he's a great actor.
Mm-hmm.
And because he's such a good actor, there'll be a good box office, and so he'll make them money. That's why he was cast. Now, for the smallest role, it takes you out of the moment because you
Mm-hmm.
think, hmm, I wonder if the
Mm-hmm.
reason that this person was cast is because they look a particular way. They have a certain level of melanin in their skin. And it's a disservice to everybody.
Yeah.
But certainly the biggest disservice is to them because I know as somebody who's been on stage as an actor before, I don't want anybody thinking about anything other than the performance that I'm giving. I
Mm-hmm.
certainly don't want them to think, boy, I bet he was cast because he has a certain skin color
Mm-hmm.
rather than talent. And the fact of the matter is that it does happen. They do
Yep.
get people do get cast because of their skin color. Look at the recent Wonka. Did you see that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with Timothy Chalamet?
Yeah.
I hate the spelling of both of his names. uh, but it messes me up, and the spell check always catches me or screws it up when I'm typing up a review with him in it. But the secondary character, I don't remember
Hmm.
the young lady's name. She was one of the weaker performers,
Yeah.
and the character wasn't written that well either. But
Yeah.
she was one of the weaker performers in the show, and so I know that I immediately thought, well, look at this. I mean, I know that this is a fantasy world, and it is not set in exactly that whatever the time period was, because it's not even a real city that they're in. So I'm willing to suspend my disbelief to say that fine Slugworth is a black man, and
Hmm.
this person is as well. Fine, okay, but then you have her in there, and she's not particularly good, and you have to wonder, was there anybody who was white who was better?
Hmm.
And they just didn't cast them because they wanted to make sure that one of the main co-stars who was in a positive light was somebody who happened to be black.
Yeah.
I don't want to think about that stuff. I
Right.
don't care. Your
Hmm.
skin color is not actually important to me, and I hate that it's being thrust upon us constantly. And that's all we think about.
Yeah.
Um, it, it makes no difference to me what your skin color is any more than it makes difference to me than what your hair color is. And
Hmm.
in fact, there's a greater genetic difference between me and a redhead than me and somebody who's black.
Hmm.
And it has nothing to do with who you are as a person.
Yeah.
So if it's not actually important, which is the way that I actually look at it, which is not actually important your skin color, then why not just cast the best person who makes the most sense for a particular movie? If
Hmm.
you're setting a movie in a heavily Eurocentric film set in the 1800s, then chances are almost everybody is going to be a white person.
Hmm.
So just
Yeah.
cast them as white because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I would say the only exception to that being if we're going to do a movie about Martin Luther King, obviously it should be a black guy. But
Should
if
be a
now
black guy.
now with the what was it Google I can't remember what was their Google. It was like their attempt
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do
yeah,
a
yeah. Whatever their AI is.
they had like
Yeah.
black Nazis. Like, oh my gosh, man! Like this is Babylon B, Chat GPT or something. Like it's just absolutely hilarious. And going back to what you said about whenever you see those instances and it makes you think because they've done it so often, right? That you realize like, okay, is there a motive here? It's not just in entertainment, right? It's in any industry that uses DEI, or I call it DIE initiatives, but any industry that uses that, because if the federal airlines all of a sudden say that a certain color people need lower standards to become a pilot, when you see that colored person as you're getting on the plane and they're your pilot, you're going to think to yourself, I really hope they're not one of the people that took advantage of those lower standards and they would have passed regardless, or you're just going to not going to get on the plane. Or if you're getting open
Yeah.
heart surgery, no one cares about the color of their doctor when they're getting open heart surgery. They care about meritocracy. They care about competence.
1,000%. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's poison everywhere. And the thing is, with movies, I usually get a lot of guff off the comments section because DEI I find annoying, but I don't necessarily find that it destroys a movie. It's an
Mm-hmm.
eye roll for me, so I don't
Mm-hmm.
mark it
Yeah.
down that much. I just say this is a thing, this happened, it's in the movie. Make your own decision on it, but I'm not going to mark the percentage down very much off of
Mm-hmm.
it because it's just an annoyance.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the way that minorities and women are treated in film nowadays, movies have become very boring because the moment that you have a quote unquote, especially if it's a female, strong, independent woman character as the lead, 9 times out of 10, her hero's journey is she's already fantastic, wonderful, virtually flawless. And her arc is she just has to learn to accept how truly awesome she is so that she can now be even more awesome. And so you see, the moment that you see that in the trailer, you see who it is that's being cast and what type
Mm-hmm.
of role. You say, well, that's the story arc. I'm not even interested
Yeah.
anymore.
So true.
Yeah, so it's obnoxious, it's annoying, and it's ruining theater.
Yeah. Well, it's something that I always think is funny too. And granted, these are non-fictional stories, but like the Marvel type, when you have these small female characters beating up multiple grown men. And like, okay, I get it. It's fictional. It's a made up universe. Whatever. I'll suspend reality for a moment.
Right.
But I honestly think that on some level, people who don't understand fights and don't, from a self defense perspective, they are getting trained on what to believe, and it is false. It is false even if you're a man in that situation and you're being taken on by multiple aggressors. Like, and to suggest that a woman can do this and do all these things, it's like, as a firearms instruction, we deal with so many. I like to tell people, like, I helped out with a CCW class the other day, and no one in this class had ever taken a firearms course in their life, and which I applaud them for taking this course. And one of the things we tell them is, you've already had thousands of hours of firearms training, but that thousands of hours has come from entertainment. It's come from Hollywood. So
Yeah.
we have to get you to forget basically everything you've seen and now learn reality. And so it's a big challenge with firearm instruction, and any sort of self-defense is telling people to forget what they see in movies, and that's just not real.
Oh, 1,000%. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3", well over 200 pounds. I'm not a tiny guy, and I don't. My wife and I talked about this, especially when we were dating. The thought of being attacked or a sexual assault,
Mm-hmm.
that's never once crossed my mind going out to my car late at night.
Mm-hmm.
It's never been a thought.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a target. I'm not a. You don't
Right.
look at me and go, "Oh yeah, that guy. We're going to go after him."
Mm-hmm.
But I still carry. I carry,
Mm-hmm.
and I also carry OC spray
Mm-hmm.
because I understand that I was in martial arts. I know that two guys, ooh, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's a bad
Yeah.
situation for me right now. One guy, you don't know what they're carrying on
Yep.
them, what their training is. Why would I let them even get close to me
Mm-hmm.
in order to take the chance that I can best them? But yeah, you have these 90-pound women in these movies who have very accommodating stuntmen working
Mm-hmm.
with them, and you can suspend your disbelief only so much.
Right.
And in a Marvel film, fine, you can say that makes sense. If you can suspend your disbelief enough to say that a guy who gets angry turns into a giant green man, I can suspend my disbelief enough to believe that 110-pound Black Widow can hurricane giant aliens to the ground.
Yeah.
Fine. But in every movie, I think it was. Are you familiar with the Critical Drinker?
Uh-uh.
Okay, so he has a very successful YouTube channel. I think he just passed 2 million subscribers just
Wow.
the other day. So
Okay.
yeah, he's the big deal. The Critical Drinker. He's another impetus for what I did. I make sure to try to get my reviews out before his, so that there's no question of whether or not. And I always feel bad. I always feel bad on the rare occasions that he gets his out before me, because
Yeah.
video takes longer, so I have a little bit of leeway there, because he and I do actually line up on a lot of different things. But I think it was him that did a really good takedown of the recent. Oh, now I'm going to Charlie's Angels with
Mm.
Kristen Stewart in there. I mean, Kristen Stewart is as big around as my wrist,
Yeah.
and she's taking down these guys who are big, well-built men who obviously know what to do. And he slows down the fight where you could just see these guys standing and waiting their turn to go after her. And as she's landing these punches that don't even look like good punches,
Mm-hmm.
that are knocking guys head over heels over top of things, and it's supposed, I don't know. I can suspend my disbelief so much, but I do have my limits, and that's one of them. I do often write about the girl bosses taking out these giant guys. In fact, there's a Fallout series. If you're familiar with Fallout, the video game series,
Yeah, we started watching. I think we watched like 2 episodes, and I never played the game, but it kept popping up on my. Is it on Prime? Whatever it's on, it kept popping up. I was like, okay, I'll check it out, and it's.
yes, I think it is. So I think it's a lot of fun, even though it does have its issues. For instance, that non-binary character that pops up twice.
There's a lot of
She's
there's a lot of stories. Like I feel like the first episode was like all these people being introduced, and I was just having a hard time keeping track of like where these people are in the storyline
yeah,
and where they're going to come in.
yeah. There's definitely a lot there, but it's a fun
Mm-hmm.
series. It has its issues, but one of the things that it gets right is that the main character, who is a woman,
Mm-hmm.
even though she does persevere throughout, she doesn't do it by being able to bench press men who 3 times her size.
Mm-hmm.
She gets her rear end handed to her regularly, and she comes out on top mostly through a little bit of luck and situational awareness, and
Mm-hmm.
being able to say, okay, if I get this force multiplier and I use it and I take advantage of this particular distraction, that's how I come out on top.
Yeah.
And so they do that well, and it's a fun, enjoyable movie. She's a good character. She's a strong female character, and everybody can enjoy it for
Mm-hmm.
for what it is. And I'm not distracted every time she's choke slamming a 7 foot tall guy.
Well, I also think that it's when you think about the police body cam footage that we have and all these fights that have occurred recently where people who have no experience in use of force are criticizing the police for what they're doing. I think they're coming at it from the angle of being trained by Hollywood on what is and is not capable for someone to do. And I have been in plenty of fights with other officers against one person, and it is a very difficult time to restrain that person. Half the time because you're fighting the other officers too, because you're all like trying to like synchronize what you're trying to do, but because it's just not as easy. It's not as clean as a Jackie Chan movie. It's not as clean as these Marvel movies and the way they put it out. And people criticize the officers for doing what they're doing. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's punching that person while they're down. It's like, well, the person's not complying, and they're trying to
Yeah,
gain
they're still
compliance.
fighting back. There's
Yeah.
still a danger. Yeah,
Yes.
until they're in cuffs and in the back of the car, there's still a danger to you and your life, and you
Yes.
want to get home to your
Yep.
family. No, it's insane. I know that I wasn't raised around guns, and I didn't start getting interested until um, the BLM riots. I was
Mm-hmm.
just like a lot of people. That's when I got my first one and started practicing all the time, and started carrying all of the time. But I, I started watching a lot of videos, and um, active self protection was the one that I really probably
Yep.
watched the most of. You're
Oh,
aware of
yep.
them
Mm-hmm. He
because
does
they do
great
a great job
breakdowns.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does a great job of analyzing the videos and showing. And because I was raised on Hollywood movies, but I
Mm-hmm.
was still pragmatic and understood that they were Hollywood movies.
Right. Yeah.
But there was one video that he played, and I think it happened down in Florida, where a guy gets shot in the head, and he's still firing off rounds. Now he's not
Mm-hmm.
aiming, but he's still firing off rounds. Oh yeah, that's right. I don't get hit in the chest with a 9 millimeter and fly backwards,
Mm-hmm.
10 feet, and drop to the ground. And so when these people say, "Why don't you shoot him in the legs?" Well, because they continue to fire. They continue to run for a while until they
Mm-hmm.
bleed out.
Yep.
Adrenaline is a wonderful drug, and you have copious amounts of it available to you at any given time. And the unreality is not doing anybody any favors. I know that, and maybe it says a lot about me that on my Twitter feed, or X. Sorry, I keep calling it Twitter, but it's X now. And you can follow me at Worth It or Woke. Uh, but I know that on my feed, I get a lot of videos of young ladies who have been watching these movies, and they are finding out. They're effing around and finding out that it's
Mm-hmm.
not it's not the way that real life is, and it's
No.
sad because these women are I mean, they're the guys are not right. I don't get me wrong. Whoever is
Mm-hmm.
watching this, I am not defending the guys who plow these women in the face. I'm only saying that there are guys who don't have a
Mm-hmm.
problem hitting women in the face,
Yep.
and you don't know who they are. And just because you think that you can get away with talking any way that you want to with these guys because you've been raised up to be told this way, either through social media or through actual
Mm-hmm.
media, the reality is that a guy even your own size is about twice as strong as you,
Yep.
and getting hit in the face hurts a lot, and they might not even stop at that. So
Mm-hmm.
you
No,
should
it's
you should understand those things.
it's so true, and a lot of people have this sentiment that it's sad. They're like, oh, it's sad that we have to be prepared for these incidents, these active shooter incidents, or it's sad that some people feel that they need to carry a gun. It's like, no, it's not sad. It's just, it is what it is. Like this reality that some people are used to about being protected and not having to defend yourself, that is abnormal. What is normal is the jungle. What is normal is having to protect yourself from violence. And it's not paranoia to be prepared to protect yourself. It's just acknowledging reality and accepting that you are your own first responder if something were to happen. You were the first
Right.
person on scene by default. And I'm so glad also that you mentioned pepper spray because I know a lot of people that don't put a lot of stock in pepper spray and they think that, oh, well, that's just if you don't have a gun. It's like, no, that is a level along the continuum of force, right? You have in law enforcement, now they kind of got away from the phrase continuum of force, but it's officer's presence is like the lowest level. And then you have your voice. And obviously, like how you use that voice is a little bit more use of force. And then you have the different gradients along the way up to deadly force. And it's always good to have those things before deadly force because it could prevent you from having to go to deadly force or to be able to gain compliance sooner. And if you have to get, like there was this situation, the Apple River stabbing incident. Are you familiar with that? There was a guy
No.
that was on the, I guess it's Apple River, and he was, I guess like on a raft, just floating down the river, and there were these drunk high school teens that were partying. And I don't know exactly what led up to it. Apparently, they were shouting at him, yelling, calling him a pedophile and a bunch of stuff. And then they started to attack him and push him in, and it was like multiple
Oh,
teenagers.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he pulled out a knife and eviscerated one of them, and stabbed. I think one of them died, and but he is
How many
now.
years did he get? He got convicted, yeah.
Oh yeah, he got convicted. I guess he'll still have an opportunity for an appeal, but I can't remember how many years he got. I just listened to a breakdown the other day of it,
It was
but
double digits.
yeah, it's a lot, and it's surprising because we have the video of what happened. I think he like lied to the police or said some things to the police that were maybe not exactly true, but again, he just had a really stressful incident. So there's but we have video of what happened, and in the video, it clearly shows this man defending himself against multiple attackers. But a lot of people just don't seem to understand the complexities of what are involved with deadly force. We talked about the fact of the disparity of force with women and even men, in those types of situations. But also, I know so many people that have guns and they think in these like black and white terms of, well, I'll just use this to defend myself if I need it, or and it's like they don't really think what happens after the fact. And I had a guy on
Right.
my last guest, I think it was my last guest, Mark from Attorneys on Retainer, and they have a program where they'll represent people in these sort of situations. But the most people have not thought beyond the hypothetical bump in the middle of the night. You see something, you shoot at it, or someone, comes at them with a knife. They don't think about the complexities and like how nuanced it is, or take like force on force training where you have, paint marking rounds and you actually shoot someone else in a safe environment. But it's way more complex. And I just go back to the movies and how movies have trained people, and John Wick or whatever the case, Jason Bourne, and how a fight's actually going to go down. And it's like, it's nothing like that. It's not as sexy as that. It's not as, you don't look as much like a hero as those people do in those movies. And yeah, it's just,
Well, then there's the after the fact. So I
Mhm.
look at OC spray as much as a protecting me at the moment as it is after the moment,
Yep.
because I try to think from the terms of on the terms of a lawyer. If I was a dirtbag lawyer and all I wanted to do was make sure that you got thrown down the river, what am I going to use against you
Hmm.
to do that? And so I need as much protection from them in today's
Hmm.
society as I do from that attacker at that moment. And
Absolutely.
so, maybe I'll get convicted of assault. Well, that's a whole lot better than getting convicted of murder.
Hmm.
because they came at me with their bare hands instead of with a knife or a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And because I am a big guy, where did I get off feeling that threatened by
Mm-hmm.
this person? That's what they're going to use
Yep.
against me.
Absolutely.
So I think it's the guy from Asp who says you need something between an angry word and a
Yep.
bullet,
Yep. That's
and
it.
that is precisely that is the philosophy that I have adopted for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not the Dirty Harry days where you could just, you know, solve something with a gun and then, all right, let's go on to the next scene. Like, it's like that's going to
Yeah, right.
happen. And then the police are going to show up and you're possibly going to be a suspect and you're
Yeah,
possibly
yeah,
going to get arrested and detained and having to know like what happens after that. But it's, it's unfortunate that no one thinks beyond that point. And I just, it was nice to see you show pepper spray as an option because that shows that you take it very seriously and it's not just
oh
this
yeah.
like theoretical thing that some people have like, oh well, yeah, I have my gun, or even worse, they're like, oh, I have my gun and it's in my truck. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's where it's going to be when you get assaulted too, is in your truck.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you ever find yourself in a situation where you have to use deadly force to defend yourself or to defend someone else, then you're going to want a good legal team defending you after the fact. And that's why I trust attorneys on retainer. And if you want to see how AOR compares to those other CCW insurance providers, then scan this QR code or check out my affiliate link in the description. They have individual and family plans so that you will be legally protected should you ever need to protect your life or someone else's life. And don't forget to use promo code DAD to save $25 on your initial sign up. So, going back to the movies again, is there anything else you want to talk about on that? Like, do you think it's getting worse, or do you think that the whole go woke, go broke thing is true and people are realizing it at all, or do you think it's just continuing to devolve further and further? And which, because you see so many more movies than I do, and you're more
Yeah.
sensitive to those elements. So I'm just really curious what your opinions would be on that.
Yeah, I don't think that it's getting any better, but I'm not sure if it's getting any worse. It's hard to say
Yeah.
because you look at shows like Fallout. I'm gonna use
Mm-hmm.
that one as an example. For the most part, it really doesn't have any wokeness in it. I mean, it has a couple things here and there, but the things that it does have, this non-binary character, and it's a non-binary character that just doesn't fit in with the world at all. In post-apocalypse, there are no non-binary people.
Right.
Right. It doesn't. There's no
Yeah.
patience. There's no time,
There are far
and
more
it's
important
just not going.
things.
Yeah, and you're not going to find your your hormone blockers
Right.
or your testosterone shots that are going to give her, in this case, that trash stash. It's not going to happen. All right.
Oh, that was, you're talking about the one in that like military unit thing with
Yes.
the
Yes.
yeah, okay. Yeah, right
Yes.
when that
They
happened.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're religious fanatic warriors
Right.
who are going to tolerate this non-binary woman in their barracks, and they're just going
Yeah.
to treat her just normal, just fine.
Hmm.
Now, the opening scene for that particular character arc had a relatively large guy getting his ass handed to him.
Hmm.
She's standing off to the side, and everybody's fine with her. Not going to happen.
Right.
That's not her role in the New World Order. But she's in there very briefly, and they even say they them. They call her a they them
Hmm.
in the show. That is very annoying, but it's one small part in 8 episodes. But it's still there. Why did they
Yeah.
do it? They did it intentionally. The writers did it because they wanted to make sure that they got their pat on the back. They got
Mhm.
invited to the right cocktail parties. I call it cocktail party wokeness because it's just enough for the side character that doesn't really have anything to do with anything, where they could say, "Look at our virtue. We have
Hmm.
signaled it thoroughly. What have you done? Invite us to the right parties."
Yeah. We have atoned for our sins in the religion of wokeness.
Yeah, it's awful. So I don't know that it's so hard to gauge whether or not it's getting better or worse. I think that there may be some studios that are getting better. What is getting better is that we have better alternatives now
Mm.
than we used to. Angel Studios,
Hmm.
uh, is going to be is going to hopefully continue to be a really good source of things. I actually have a screener for Sight that's getting ready to come out that I've been sitting on. I've just been too busy with stuff. I'm hoping to sit down and watch it tonight. I really don't know anything about it except for that it's from them and that's what it's called. Um, but they did Cabrini. Did you see that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, Cabrini is the real life story about Saint Cabrini. I know I'm Protestant. I'm not Catholic, but still, she's the first American saint,
Okay.
and it's all about her early works in the U.S. And how that came to be. And it's a
Cabrini or Caprini?
with a B as in boy,
Gotcha.
Cabrini. Yeah, just go. You know what? Go to worthitourwoke.com, and it'll be on there.
Link in the description.
Yeah, yeah. Just when you go to reviews, click on the Angel Studios, and that'll pop up on there. But they did Sound of Freedom.
hmm
Did you? I'm sure you saw that. Yes.
I have not seen it, but I I need to see it.
We have we have to stop talking now. Can't believe you haven't seen that.
Well, I'll see you later. Interview's over, guys.
Excuse me. So they've done that. They've done a few other things that haven't been necessarily quite on par with those, but those two particular films, those are on the same level of production quality, performances, writing as anything else that other mainstream studios are putting out there.
Hmm.
And then there are also the folks who did Jesus Revolution last year. Last year? Yeah, last year. Pretty sure it was last year. Well, starring Kelsey Grammer. And even though that is an overtly out of the two, that's an overtly Christian film. Um, it's still a very well done film. Still not quite as good as Cabrini or Sound of Freedom. Not that same level of quality, but pretty darn close. And so we have that going out. Then you have the Daily Wire and what they're doing for
hmm
children's programming right now, and they're also, they're dabbling with some other more adult level entertainment as well. But Bentkey, if you don't already have a Daily Wire subscription, it's worth it if for no other reason than you get access to their Bentkey app, which is all 100% safe, non-woke children's programming, and it's good. It's high quality stuff. It's just as good as the stuff that they're watching from the
Yeah,
more
I've never checked it
mainstream
out, but
sources.
that's really great to hear that it is good because I've never checked it out, but I've seen it on there.
Well, I mean, it's such a relief to be able to know, hey kids, what are you watching? Bentkey. Okay, I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
I actually can use the TV as a
hmm
babysitter right now so that I can get something else
Yeah.
done. So those are excellent alternatives. Um, there was Daily Wire. They're getting ready to release a series by Adam Carolla, who I mentioned earlier, called Mr. Burcham, and I think that looks funny. Comedy is I think going to is a excellent way to capture hearts and minds,
hmm
and I think that from what I've seen, it looks like it's going to be pretty good. I actually was pretty excited. I got invited to their Hollywood premiere to watch it, but I can't make it.
Oh,
So yeah, they're supposed to be sending me a screener for that, and today or tomorrow, and I should be able to get that up and running for them. But there are alternatives. I think that is more so than Disney making a change. I
hmm
think what we're going to see is these alternatives
Yep.
that are going to come up, and the technology is so inexpensive right now, and everybody wants to be an actor or actress, and so I think that access to that quality is going to be more readily available too. So
hmm
I think that's where the change will probably end up taking place.
Yeah. Vote with your dollars.
Well, that's why we exist. So in the meantime, yeah, don't go see something that's a bunch of woke crap. Take a look at worthitourwoke.com and find out if it's worth it for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it was also nice to The Chosen. It was done so well, and that was the first time I saw a Christian movie like that was actually done really well, and I was like, oh, this
Yeah,
is maybe not the first time, but one of in terms of like the big ones, and especially like how it was funded, it was very amazing how that story's kind of unfolded. in terms of the production story. Obviously, the story itself is amazing too, but
It's all right.
greatest story ever told. But it's amazing
Meh.
how it's become so mainstream, and people the success has proven to people that like this is what people are hungry for. This is what people want, and I hope more and more companies see that, like the Daily Wire, and realize that we don't need we don't need Disney Plus, we don't need Netflix, we don't need Hulu, Amazon Prime, or whatever.
Yeah, well, I know that Daily Wire dumped something like $100 million into this children's thing, so they're all in. There's no doubt about that.
Wow.
But The Chosen, you can look at me with disdain now. I've not watched any of it.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I know.
We've canceled out now.
I know. I when I started doing Worth It or Woke, I thought, oh, that's what I'll watch, and then I saw how many episodes there were to catch up on, and I said, I can't. I don't have enough time. It's just me. I don't have enough time to catch up on all that stuff. Now I offer for paid subscribers, because there's a lot. Most of the stuff is still free on the website, but I do have some behind the paywall stuff. And one of the things that I have is what I call my rapid reviews, where I just go through. I'm watching. I call it rapid reviews because I'm usually watching it at 1.8 to 2 times its normal speed, just so I can see what are the woke elements on it. Is it halfway decent? Here's just a review that's this long and the important information, and go with God and see if it's okay for you. So now that I have that, maybe I'll watch The Chosen at twice its normal speed.
I'm sure after you do that I'm sure if you do that a few times, it's like when you watch a normal movie at normal speed, you're like, man, this plot's going so slow.
You know what? It's funny that you say that. So after I've binged a season at twice speed, my internal dialogue is all very sped up. It's like Ben Shapiro's talking.
It's like Ben Shapiro's talking to you.
Yeah. He's something I cannot listen to at half speed, because when I do, the pitch goes up so high it drives my dog nuts. But it does for about an hour to an hour and a half. I noticed that my thinking, the voice in my head is
Interesting.
that.
Maybe that's what his parents did when he was a kid. They just let him watch everything at 2 times speed.
Maybe that's what it was. That's the secret. Well, I'm gonna have to do that for my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, James, this has been great. I mean, I really enjoyed this interview, and I really enjoy what you're doing, and you're showing people like this stuff so they don't have to go and waste their money on it, especially when movies are in theaters, or spending money on Amazon Prime or whatever. So I really like the mission that you have. Can you tell people real quick, we covered some of them, but real briefly, where they can find you, social media, and your website again?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. It's all at Worth It or Woke. However, if you actually want to interact with me, and Twitter X would be the way to go, because for the other ones, I basically just post updates to what it is that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And of course, you can find out what the latest reviews are that I have at worthitorwoke.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. And guys, thank you so much for watching. And as always, train to a higher standard.